What does it feel like to walk through a city now ruled by one of the world's most feared groups? Well, we're about to find out. Guys, the first thing that hits me in Kabul, Afghanistan's capital, isn't the heat. It's the silence. Not the calm, peaceful kind, but the type that watches you. The kind that feels like it's sizing you up from every window, doorway, and shadow. Every pair of eyes follows me the way security might study an alien that just crash-landed. Curious, suspicious, and quietly calculating what to do if I make one wrong move. I got here after traveling through Pakistan and crossing the Torkham land border, which is one of the few active routes people still use when direct flights are limited, unpredictable, or closely monitored. Honestly, guys, I could have flown straight into Kabul International Airport like some journalists or aid workers who arrived through Istanbul or Dubai layovers. But I wanted something different. I wanted to feel what it's actually like to enter the way ordinary people still do, through uncertainty, dust, bargaining, and tension, not airplane coffee and overhead luggage compartments. Outside the terminal, the air feels heavy, not from the heat, but from scrutiny. Men sit on top of pickup trucks, rifles resting across their knees like they're part of their bodies. They don't aim the weapons, they don't bark orders, they just stare, long enough to make you wonder if they're memorizing your face for later. I look away fast, but somehow it feels like looking away is also suspicious. A young boy walks past me carrying warm naan, aka flatbread. His eyes lock onto mine, curious, innocent, and unsure, like he's trying to decide whether I'm lost, brave, or just the dumbest tourist alive. And somehow, that 5-second stare tells me more about this place than a decade of headlines ever could. Then a hand taps my arm in a quick, firm, controlled way. I turn, and there he is. Fully bearded Fareed, my fixer, my translator, my safety net. The shield you need in a city where one wrong sentence can follow you forever. He doesn't shake my hand, he barely moves his lips. Instead, he murmurs from the corner of his mouth, "Walk with me, talk only when I tell you, don't look curious." Well, I don't really trust him, not yet, but the realization that I wouldn't last 10 minutes in this city without him, that hits me immediately. Sharp, heavy, and undeniable. As we walk, it becomes painfully clear that I'm visible, even when I'm silent, even when I'm standing still. Every step feels like it comes with a price. Every direction I glance, someone is already glancing back. Not openly, but through windows, mirrors, and the kind of quiet surveillance that makes CCTV look unnecessary. At the first checkpoint, barely 650 feet from the exit, a Taliban guard scans the line. His expression is blank, bored, and somehow still terrifying. Fareed hands the guard a folded paper. The man glances at the document, then at me, then back at the paper before flicking 2 fingers and waving us through. I breathe again, but only halfway, because from what I've seen so far, Kabul doesn't welcome you. It evaluates you. Shops sit half open. Conversations stop the moment I walk past. Women appear only in glimpses. Even the wind feels like it's listening. And that's when a question slams into me, echoing like footsteps in an empty hallway. What does it really feel like to walk through a city ruled by one of the world's most feared groups? Headlines give you numbers, news reports give you opinions, but they can't give you this, the feeling of being watched, assessed, and silently measured. But before I can figure out how to survive 24 hours here, I need to tell you how all this started. Because countries don't just change rulers. Sometimes they slip, slowly and completely, into their hands. It's been about 2 hours since I arrived in Kabul, and I have to admit that Fareed drives like a man who's already survived this once. I sit in the passenger seat, gripping the door as if the van is held together by nothing more than prayer and duct tape. Outside, I watched part of Kabul slide past, a blur of concrete, gray mountains, and checkpoints that looked older than the roads themselves. Then I asked Fareed, how did Afghanistan become like this? Fareed taps the steering wheel, calm and steady. He said, well, before you see today, you must understand the day everything changed. And he's absolutely right. To understand Afghanistan in 2025, you have to rewind to August 2021, the moment when history snapped in two. One day, the Afghan government existed. The next, it didn't. The Taliban stormed Kabul and the city collapsed inward, like a sandcastle hit by a wave. People remember the footage. Families running with children in their arms, gunfire echoing near the airport, people clinging to airplanes in sheer desperation. The kind of images that stick in your mind whether you want them to or not. Fareed said he was here that morning. By noon, he says, everyone knew the government was gone. By evening, the Taliban were drinking tea in the palace. He laughs softly, not because it's funny, but because it still feels impossible. But the story began even earlier, when the Taliban were born in the chaos of the 1990s, religious students promising order after years of civil war. They took power in 1996, lost it in 2001 after the US invasion. Then they spent 20 years fighting, regrouping, and waiting. Then the US withdrawal in 2021 created the perfect vacuum. Its leader, President Ashraf Ghani, fled, and provinces fell like dominoes. Suddenly, the world watched the fall of Kabul in real time. A moment so fast it seemed staged, yet so real it scarred an entire generation. I stare out the window as Fareed speaks, and I can almost feel the ghosts of that day in the empty lots, the abandoned checkpoints, and in the faces that harden the moment you mention August 2021. Kabul didn't just change hands, it was abandoned, left to new ones. And if you want to understand life under those hands, you need to know who truly holds power now, and how much of the city bends to their word.
Guys, we're 6 hours in, and Fareed just handed me a badge with my name wrongly printed on it. I caught it before I took it, but Fareed didn't say anything when I called his attention to it, which probably means it doesn't really matter. However, I was told that this little card isn't just paper, it's access, and in Kabul, access equals permission. We go through gates and turnstiles like tourists at a museum. Except this museum has armed guards, and there's no exit you can really trust. This is the belly of the beast, Fareed says quietly. The men who run this city sit behind doors you'll never see. So who are these men? Well, at the very top is Hibatullah Khanzada, the Taliban's supreme leader. He's based in Kandahar, a major city in southern Afghanistan. Hibatullah is hardly ever seen in public, but his words move mountains. Below him, the day-to-day running of Afghanistan falls to Mohammed Hassan Akhand, the prime minister, and Sirajuddin Haqqani, the interior minister, along with his powerful network of brothers. Inside the compound, I watch men with clipboards, adjusting security cameras, chewing cigarettes, like they're running a war theater, not a government ministry. One sign reads, Ministry of Interior, Security Division. I look at the uniforms. Quiet. Professional, but deadly. Fareed leans in and whispers, they control everything, he whispers. I nod. Trying to digest the city I'm in is responding to a structure that looks familiar, but under completely different rules. Analysts say the Taliban didn't just take over the government. They rebuilt it, consolidated power, and remade the institutions so that even if you don't see the militants, you feel their system everywhere. And here's the thing, the system doesn't feel transparent. I asked Fareed who actually checks these so-called executives, because in any ideal leadership, there should be some kind of checks and balances. Well, Fareed shrugs and says, inside here, no one. Outside, only people who still think the old rules matter. I walk away thinking, if this is today's roadmap, how do you even plan for the future when you don't know who's drawing the map? Because power here isn't just held, it's alive. And to understand what life under that power really looks like, I have to step out into the streets. Guys, it's been 8 hours since I arrived in Kabul, and Fareed is guiding me into the heart of the city, and it takes about 10 seconds for the new reality to smack me in the face. Here, the streets don't just show daily life, they expose it. I saw a fighter lift his hand, and the entire market literally freezes. Cars idle, men stop mid-sentence, and even the air feels like it holds its breath. And there's nothing like music here. Cafes play nothing but the hum of old ceiling fans. Even the kids don't whistle. Fareed leans in and whispers, they're scared a song could be seen as rebellion. Honestly, guys, it sounds dramatic until you feel the silence yourself. And women here are almost invisible. When one does pass, she moves fast, covered head to toe, head down. It feels like watching someone trying to outrun the world. We walked by a street that used to sell wedding dresses. Fareed pointed at the shuttered shops and said, this whole block was colorful before, talent before, dreams before. Now, just men's clothes. It hits harder than I expected. Then comes Kabul's rhythm. Not music, but engines. Motorbikes zigzag like they're trying to escape bees. Entire families crowded onto a single seat because fuel's expensive and work is rare. A man selling pomegranates gives me a cautious smile, the kind that says, please don't bring trouble to my stall. Honestly, it's a survival reflex baked into daily life here. Inside the men's cafes, the mood is kind of strange. Warm tea, old carpets, and a room full of laughter that never gets too loud. Every man glances at the door every few minutes. No one ever sits with their back to the entrance. Fareed leans towards me and says, you can't tell who's Taliban and who's not. That's why everyone stays careful. And that's Kabul under the Taliban. Not chaos, but compression. Life shrinks, dreams shrink, even body language shrinks. As I walk through the city, one question keeps circling in my head. What rules are shaping this silence? And who decides how small people have to become? To answer that, we have to open the rule book, the real one, the laws that control everything from what people wear to what they're even allowed to hope for. If the streets show you how Kabul behaves, the laws explain why. Fareed and I pass a government announcement board. Blank sheets everywhere, except for one new decree taped in the center. No signature, no explanation, just a command. It's a reminder that here, rules aren't debated. They descend. The Taliban's restrictions touch every part of daily life, but the sharpest edge falls on women first. One directive literally states that a woman must conceal her voice, face, and body in public. This is not a suggestion, but a command. And the city reflects it. Silence where voices used to be, shadows where women once stood. We stop by a girls' school. The gate is locked, dust gathers in the corners, like time has stopped. Girls over the age of 12 have been kept out of classrooms since 2021, which in practice means schools closed. I mean, an entire generation paused. Dreams put on hold, like unfinished homework. Fareed kicks a pebble and mutters, my niece wanted to be a doctor. The words hit harder than the stone. I could feel the sadness in his voice. We watch the morality police, Amr bil Maruf, patrol like ghosts. They don't yell, they don't need to. A glance from them makes women pull their veil higher, vendors turn down his radio, and teenagers straighten their posture. Even men live under rules here. No trimmed beards, no Western-style haircuts. A barber tells me he was warned after giving someone a fade, the kind you'd see in any city in the world. Inside homes, the restrictions multiply. TV choices are limited, music is banned, public gatherings are closely monitored. A researcher recently described Afghanistan as entering a form of gender apartheid, where women aren't erased by accident, but by design. And it's impossible to ignore how normal these restrictions have become. People don't act shocked. They act adjusted, shrinking themselves to fit rules they never chose. As I stand on that silent street, I can't help wondering, what happens to a society when half the population is forced off the map? To understand the human cost of these rules, I had to summon courage and hear from the people living behind them, the whispered stories the world rarely gets to see.
We're 18 hours in, guys, and Fareed leads me down a narrow alley into a quiet apartment block. This, he says, is where the real stories live. Suddenly, the city noise disappears, replaced by low voices, shuffled footsteps, and the distant hum of a generator running low on fuel. The first person I met was Marwa, a literature teacher. Her school was hit months ago. Windows gone, desks broken, the chalkboard split like a fault line across her classroom. Yet she teaches, sometimes online, in that same shattered room, coats zip tied against the cold because the heaters haven't worked since winter. She tells me a teacher without students is a ghost, and looking around the empty room with her, I believe her. Next, Fareed takes me to a group of university boys because girls can't attend anymore. One of them shows me his phone. Dozens of poems, all written by his sister. She can't read them aloud, can't publish them, can't even be seen with them. So he carries them for her. Her voice shouldn't disappear, he says softly. It's a kind of rebellion. Quiet, invisible, but rebellion all the same. Then I met Evans, the backpacker. Yes, an actual Western backpacker who somehow thought Afghanistan was a good destination for his adventure vlog. All he did was shrug and say, Kabul feels safe, but not free. And for once, a stranger's summary hits perfectly. But the moment that'll stay with me forever happened in a stairwell. A young Afghan woman, no name, no face, only her voice. She whispers, "It's like living in a prison. The restrictions are too unbearable." She looks down the hall to make sure no one is listening. But even prisons have whispers of rebellion. She shows me her notebooks, pages filled with secret lessons she teaches to young girls in private homes. Mathematics, English, poetry. A hidden classroom carved out of defiance. Before I leave her, she hands me a small folded paper. She says it's nothing. But it's not nothing. It's one of her poems. I promised not to read it on camera, but the last line burned itself into me. We are not erased, we are hidden. And standing there in that dim stairwell, I realized something. People here are fighting for their futures using whatever weapon they have left. Words, notebooks, whispers, memory. But outside those stairwells, the world has its own way of deciding Afghanistan's fate. And none of it happens here, where the people actually live. Guys, the deeper you go into Kabul, the heavier one truth becomes. This country is alone. Fareed and I are standing on a pedestrian bridge, watching the city breathe, slowly, painfully. He points toward a government building wrapped in dust and cracked windows. No embassy flags, he says. No official recognition. Kabul is a capital without a world. Not a single government officially recognized the Taliban as Afghanistan's rulers, until Russia did recently. Only one, guys. It's like the world pressed mute on an entire nation. And people pay the price. Half the population, more than 20 million people now depend on humanitarian aid to survive. That means 50% rely on aid. But the aid isn't enough, and it isn't guaranteed. Sanctions squeeze the economy from the outside, restrictions squeeze society from the inside. In fact, ordinary Afghans are trapped in the middle, carrying a burden they never asked for. We pass by a marketplace where a man sells onions out of a torn sack. He tells me he used to sell electronic repair parts. People don't fix phones anymore, he shrugs. They fix hunger. And then there are the global players circling Afghanistan with calculated caution. China sends diplomats, signs deals, and positions itself as a partner, but still avoids full recognition. Russia plays the same game, interested, engaged, but careful. It's like everyone wants a seat at Afghanistan's table, just not the responsibility of sitting there. Fareed watches a convoy roll past, old trucks loaded with sacks of wheat stamped with blue UN logos. Winter is coming, he says quietly. And that hits harder than any political analysis. Winters here don't forgive. They expose every crack in the system. According to humanitarian reports, Afghanistan is spiraling deeper into crisis with rising child labor, collapsing hospitals, and families selling their belongings piece by piece just to buy bread. And yet, walking through these streets, you see resilience stitched into every face. People don't complain. They endure, because they have no other choice. But before I leave this city, there's one more truth I need to confront. Not about Kabul itself, but about the people who breathe life into it, even when everything around them is falling apart. Guys, it's been almost 24 hours in Kabul, and everything we've seen over the last 20 hours sits heavily in my chest. I watch teachers keep teaching in broken classrooms. I watch shops sell things people could barely afford. I watched women tuck their voices away, as if they were dangerous. And I watched the city held together by quiet survival. Not because people forgot how to dream, but because they were stubborn enough to keep dreaming anyway. Fareed taps his phone and says, "They think the world forgot." Maybe some of it is true. Recognition isn't coming easily. Laws keep getting tougher, and morality codes were recently formalized, tightening the space for women's lives and their voices even further. Aid pipelines are wobbly. Winter looms. Kids hunger for classrooms. And yet, despite the cold facts, what keeps coming back to me is deeply human, something no statistic can capture. The way people hand you tea, even when they have almost nothing. The way a young man reads his sister's hidden poems to me as if he's holding her voice in his hands. The way a teacher smiles when a student remembers a line of poetry. Light, small, but impossible to extinguish. So what do we do with what we saw, guys? We can't pretend the politics are simple. We can't pretend there's one solution. But bearing witness matters. Listening matters. When the world looks away, the smallest acts, like delivering medicine, keeping a secret classroom open, publishing a story, become lifelines. Fareed flicks a cigarette into the wind and doesn't say much. Then he looks at me and shrugs. "You'll leave in an hour." They won't. Remember that. And it hits me again. The unfairness, the quiet heroism, the everyday dignity that keeps a city breathing. If this trip changed me, it's because I saw how life insists on itself in places designed to erase it. I saw how people cobble hope back together with whatever they have left. Poems, classrooms and cellars, a single apple shared between neighbors. So here's the thing I want you to take away, guys. The headlines will keep trying to make sense of it all in graphs and numbers, but the real story lives in the small, stubborn things. The teachers who refuse to stop teaching. The women whispering lessons in kitchens. The children who keep flying kites even when the sky looks dangerous. Remember, behind the silence are voices waiting to be heard. So if this moved you, angered you, saddened you, or left you thinking, don't let it vanish with this video. Give it a thumbs up to spread awareness. Share it. Support verified humanitarian groups helping people in Afghanistan and other countries destabilized by war. Talk about the stories that don't get clicks. And subscribe to my channel to join me as I continue to explore the untold corners of the world. See you in the next video.